In this lecture, I'm going to show you how to trigger these doors to open automatically when your player character walks up to them. So in the last lecture, we created this animation states, and if I just play it for you, you can see that the door will open and close on a loop. So it's just going round and round these animation states, and if you want to see them in action, you can click on the object that's actually performing the animations in the hierarchy, and it will show you these animations as they're running. Okay, so to begin with, let's stop playing. So first of all, to trigger this door to open when we walk up to it, we need a character that will walk up to it. In versions of Unity greater than 2018, the way that you import the Unity standard asset characters has changed. Now, I've provided these characters as a resource file attached to this lecture. If you grab hold of standard character assets.unity package, just drag and drop that into your assets folder and then just click on import. What that will do is give you a folder called standard assets down in the assets. So once that's loaded, we're going to grab hold of one of those characters and drag that into the scene. If you get any errors after importing, just go into the console and click on clear, and that should get rid of them for you. So here's the assets folder, standard assets. You want to go in there, then you want to go into characters, first person character, prefabs, and we're going to use the FPS controller prefab. So just drag and drop that into your scene view. If it doesn't appear like mine does in the scene view, then just make sure you've got the gizmos enabled. Now you're going to find that it looks like that. Now if I double click on it so we can focus in on it, it's a capsule around a camera basically, which will allow you to walk around the environment. However, this capsule needs to be above the ground, otherwise you're going to fall through it. So just pick it up by its y-axis and just drag it up so that the capsule is above that ground plate. Now just move yourself back a little bit. You can see that the camera in here is now showing what's going on in this scene. You don't want to have two cameras in your scene, so go over to the hierarchy, find the second camera that you were initially using and just untick it in the inspector so it doesn't cause you sort of clash issues. Now let's just press play to check that this is working. Okay, so this is going to be a mouse look, yep, in your game view, and you should be able to use the arrow keys to walk away and walk back, and there's our door that is automatically animated so far. So our objective now is to walk up to the door while it's closed, have it open and be able to walk through it and then have it close again. Now once you're in this mode, you'll notice that your mouse has disappeared. If you want your mouse back, just hit the escape key and then you can stop that from playing. Okay, so the next step is to put an object on this door that will be able to tell when the player has got close enough to the door, which will trigger it to open. In the game environment, to determine when one object has run into another, we can use the physics system. And we actually do a little trick with the physics system so that it doesn't cause physics on our character, but it will trigger events. Right, so this object we're going to create as a trigger for our door is going to sit around the door. So we actually want it to come out here and then on the other side be out here as well, so you can actually walk over the top of it. Or in this case, it'll be walking through it, but it'll be faking that there's a pressure plate or something here to walk onto. So find the door, which is the child of the door frame part. This is the one that has the animation on it. Now, what we want to do here is to right-click on it, 3D object, and add a cube. Now, that's going to add a default cube that we'll see down the bottom here. Now, if we just lift that up a little bit, doesn't have to be perfectly aligned with the floor. Actually, you probably want it to be slightly like that. It has to be big enough that when our player character runs into it, it's going to trigger it. Right now we want it to be all the way across the door, so I've just hit the R key and I'm grabbing hold of this sideways resizer in that direction, and then I also want to resize it in this direction as well. Now as I do that, because the center of the cube is almost near the door, in fact if we even just hit W and just move it back so it's aligned with the door, and if I just hold down the Alt key and swivel around, you'll see that it's also come out this way. Now that door takes 3 seconds to open, and therefore we probably want to just resize it a little bit bigger so that it starts opening from back here. If we run it now just to see what's going to happen, you can see that we've got this cube with a collider on it is attached to the door, and it's actually moving with the door. If I walk up to it, my character is going to run into it and it will actually stop it. And if I stand underneath it, it's going to push on my character and push it down through the ground. So it's still got the physics system working on it as far as a collision type thing happening on the character. We don't want that cube to be that sort of collider. So we can make it into just a trigger so that it will trigger events. Click on the cube in the hierarchy. Let's call this door trigger, just so that we know which one we're talking about. Now, if you have a look in the inspector, you'll see that there's a box collider attached to it, which is fair enough because it is a cube, but we don't want it to act like a normal collider. So we turn it into a trigger with this is trigger setting here. Just tick that box. Now, if we run this, it will allow us to walk right up to it, and it won't even be like it's there at all. So I'm walking straight through it at this point. It's not doing anything to us, and it can even go straight through our character. Okay, so we now have this trigger, and we need to link it up with the animations that we created previously, because this door is now just opening and closing on this loop. So instead of doing that, we don't want the door to go into an opening state unless we've run into this trigger system here. That means we put a condition on this transition. So we say that this transition can't run unless a certain condition is met in the game environment. And until that condition is met, then you're just going to have to stay in the closed state. So to create these conditions or parameters that we're putting on of this thing here, if you have a look in the Animator window right up in the top left-hand corner, there's a little parameters tab. So select that and then click on this plus next to here, and that'll allow you to create a new parameter. We're going to create a Boolean parameter, and we're going to call it is opening. So is opening, when it becomes true, then it will start opening the door, and when it becomes false, it will start closing the door. So how do we use this and link it up with our cycle that we've got going on here? Select the transition that's going from closed to open. Then in the inspector, you'll see that there's a spot in there for the conditions in which that transition will actually run. And we can press on the plus, which will automatically add the first parameter in our list, which is our is opening. And it will set it to true. Or it will say that it's true. So when is opening is true is the only time that this cycle will actually go along this transition and then hit the opening state. So if we run it at this point without doing anything else, that door is going to remain closed because that parameter that we've put on this transition is going to stop it from going along here and go around this loop. So let's just play. And you'll now see that our door is permanently in that closed state. And even if you look over here to the animation state for close, you can see that it's constantly just looping through that closed state there. Next, we'll want the same thing to happen for when the door is open and going into the closing state. Once it's open, we don't want it to close until our isOpening parameter becomes false. So select that transition, and then in the inspector you want to add the new condition, which is again going to be isOpening, but this time isOpening will be set to false, which will then cause this part to trigger. So when isOpening is true, it will go from closed to opening to open, and it'll stay open. It won't go into the closing until isOpening becomes false. So that completes our little cycle that's going on here with these transitions. Now we have to do a little bit of programming to cause this isOpening value here to change from true and false. And when we want it to change from true and false will depend on where our player character is with respect to this trigger cube that we've added in here. So when we run into this trigger cube, we actually want to set that isOpening parameter here to become true, which will trigger this and the opening will occur. All right, so now it's time just to write a little bit of code. And we'll do that in the next lecture. The online learning journey can be a lonely one when you don't know how to find other students that share your enthusiasm for the lessons. You can connect with us and other students and find extra resources and tutorials on the following channels. YouTube, where you'll find years of tutorials on Unity and programming. Twitter, where you can keep up to date with the latest announcements from the Holistic 3D team. Discord, where you can live chat with us and fellow students as well as ask questions and share your projects. LinkedIn, where you'll find the latest information about our upcoming courses and promotions. Instagram, where you can see what we are working on and get screenshots and videos of future tutorials. And of course the Facebook Holistic 3D Game Developers group, where you can share your projects, catch the latest programming joke, keep up to date with any upcoming course chat about your projects, and keep an eye on the latest Unity Asset Store bargains. Whatever way you choose to connect, you'll find like-minded, passionate students at the other end, ready to help, collaborate, and share ideas.
Work it.
The Beginner's Guide to 3D Animation in Unity will take you on a journey through the Mecanim tools built into the Unity game engine. Complete with over 60 step-by-step video lectures, workshops, and models, this course will provide you with a thorough grounding to create your own game-ready animated characters and assets. Hi, I'm Dr. Penny DeVale. I've been teaching in the areas of computer games, animation and artificial intelligence for over 25 years and have been working with Unity since its inception, making my own games. I also write best-selling textbooks and tutorials to help others develop their own skills. Through my unique hands-on approach combining practical instruction with theoretical concepts, you'll be creating your own animations for Unity in no time. I will guide you through the animation fundamentals, starting with an examination of timelines, keyframes and tweening. You will jump straight into exercises that will move your game objects around and deform their shapes. I'll then show you how you can trigger animations to occur when gameplay events take place to add more dynamic effects to your virtual worlds. We'll then move on to working with animation rigs imported from 3D software and explore how these are integrated into the Unity environment, as well as taking a look at how third-party tools for making our own humanoid characters and animations work. You will breathe life into your characters by following along as we construct from scratch simple code to move characters around and synchronize their movements. This is essential knowledge for any game developer. You will encounter throughout the course many exercises and projects addressing essential animation challenges confronted when putting together a game, from the construction of a third-person character capable of numerous actions through to developing dynamic animations created at runtime with inverse kinematics and blending. This course is an ideal introduction to Unity's animation systems, bringing together both the art and programming to give you a holistic set of skills necessary to make your game development dreams become reality. You will come away from this course with a thorough understanding of how animations can be created, modified and controlled within a game project, as well as the ability to get stuck into your own Mecanim projects. So what are you waiting for? Enroll now. Hi, I'm Penny. Welcome to this course on animation in Unity. What you're about to go through is a great overview and quite in-depth look at the Mecanim system that's built into the Unity game engine. And it's just going to give you so much insight into the powerful mechanisms that are built into this for animators and also programmers who want to work with animations. Now, what you're about to see following this little section here is the original introduction video. I first made this animation course about 4 years ago. So this is the third time I've gone through to update it, and it's now been checked all the way through for version 2020 of Unity, and very, very little has changed. So you could still use 2018, 2019, 2020, and let's hope beyond. Most of it's the same. The theory is definitely all the same that sits underneath animations and how animations are generated using all the timeless concepts that animators first came up with. So sit back and enjoy the introduction and then get straight stuck into your own projects after it. I've been teaching game development, programming and art in universities internationally for over 25 years, and one of the biggest hurdles I've found with dealing with artists wanting to develop interactive multimedia is programming. With this in mind, I'll provide you with all the code you need to make your animations work, providing thorough explanations along the way of what's going on. Having said that, there's not a lot of code you'll need because the Mecanim system does a lot of the hard work for you. If you're a programmer coming to this course wanting to learn to animate, then I also cater for you. You can use your programming skills to expand the functionality of the applications we make while getting a thorough understanding of how to get things moving in Unity. So in summary, who is this course for? Well, it's for you. You don't need to be an artist and you don't need to be a programmer. In fact, I'll assume you have very little background in either area, ensuring that you're provided with all the assets that you'll need to practice animation in Unity. If you can create a sim, you can do this course. I guess I should tell you about the topics that we'll cover. Well, first we start with a gentle examination of the Unity interface. If you're already familiar with Unity, you may still like to watch these couple of lectures, as you might pick up a few pointers on how I do things in the interface. Next, we'll take a look at the easiest way to create moving objects in Unity using the physics system. With this, you will learn how to make an object move in a scene and to add gravity and control friction. Then we'll get into some real animations, looking at timelines and the creation of keyframes for specific movements of objects. If you're familiar with animation packages such as Blender or Maya, this stuff will be second nature. But I still cater for the complete novice, and we will practice several exercises for setting keyframes and controlling the movements between them. Now, because we are working in a game engine, it wouldn't be much of an animation not to be able to interact with it. So then we'll start working with triggers and adding characters into a scene that can cause animations to play on cue. With this knowledge on hand, we will move into humanoid animations. You'll get to play with some excellent free software for designing your own character and then put free quality motion capture animation onto it. We'll bring this character into Unity and coordinate its movements with the keyboard and mouse controls to develop a third-person character. More complex animations will then be developed and linked to more player commands to create characters that interact with objects in the game world. Moving on from this, we will use blending to morph between poses for creating complex procedural animations, and then finally examine ways in which inverse kinematics can be employed to add custom tweaks to animations at runtime. Now, I would say sit back and relax, but you'll be getting no rest watching this course. Almost all lectures are step-by-step workshops in which you will follow along as together we explore the Unity Mecanim system. At the end of this course, you will have a thorough understanding of animating objects and characters in Unity, as well as a grasp of terminology used in the field that will stand you in good stead for creating bigger and better animated game projects and being able to confidently try new things. So, what are we waiting for? Let's get started. Welcome back to these videos looking at our humanoid characters. So these are the ones that were brought in from the Make Human software. They're also included as a resource for the final project for the previous lecture so that you can use that if you'd like to. Now, both of these characters, or the meshes I should say down here in the assets, are set to humanoid rigs. We're going to now put some animations on them, and we're going to use Thriller Teddy. So what you need to do is get hold of that Thriller Teddy package, not your final one that you created, but the one that's just the initial starter files for it. And that was called Thriller Teddy. So let me just bring those in and drop them into my assets and import them. Okay, so here they are here. Now, here is Teddy. Now, Teddy is a generic model. Now, these animations here were all created for this Teddy rig. So as far as they know, they only know about the bone structure of Teddy here. Okay, so what we're going to do with this Teddy is we're going to come over into the inspector and actually make him into a humanoid, or attempt to, and see if we can. So let's go humanoid. Now we're going to do a create from this model, and we're going to click apply. The little tick next to configure comes up. Now you get all of these warnings, but if you click on the configure, you can see that there's no red parts on this image. So Teddy is good to go. And I also know that Teddy's good to go as far as animations go for a humanoid, because Teddy is an actual Unity asset. So these warnings are just warnings, and they're not going to get in our road. Okay, so now that we've done that, if you have a look down in your assets, you'll have your Teddy Thriller avatar down here, and this is actually called Teddy Thriller Idol. Okay, now that's important to remember. So this is basically the link between the animation and the humanoid structure that's within Unity. Now, these two guys, our two humans, have a link between their structure and the humanoid structure in Unity. That would suggest that we can put Teddy's animations onto these characters. Okay, so let's try that out. We're going to select the first human and have a look for an animator on it. Okay, so it's going to be the controller, which we haven't yet created, but you can see that the avatar that we created previously by making it human has actually been added in there for us. And if we have a look at our second human, it's in there as well. Now, if you don't see an animator on these, it's pretty easy for you to just add one, but it's the controller that we need to create. Now, we don't have Teddy's controller because we actually created that in one of the lectures. So let's create in here, right click, and we're going to create an animator controller for Thriller. Okay, so let's just open that up. Here's our Thriller controller. We want to put part 1 of Thriller into there. Okay. Right, so with this animator that's now called Thriller, we can go to our human 1 and drag and drop that Thriller up into the missing controller. And we can also put it on the second one while we're there. So let's do both humans at the same time. Okay, let's now press play and see what happens. Right, now, this is a classic thing that you'll come up with when there's a problem in your animation system. Your characters, your humanoid characters, will go into this stance and nothing else will happen. When this does happen, you know that you're trying to put a generic animation onto a humanoid character. If we go into Teddy Thriller Part 1, which was the animation that we've put up here in our animator, have a look at the rig for that. You can see that the rig is set to generic. It needs to be humanoid. Okay, so let's make that humanoid, and then we're going to, for the avatar definition, actually copy from another avatar, and we're going to use Teddy's one. So this is our Teddy Thriller idle avatar that we already created, because remember that these animations I just said were made with Teddy's rig, so therefore they're going to match nicely. And we're going to apply that. Now let's press play again and see how we go. Okay, good. So you now see that the Thriller animation from Teddy is now playing on these humanoid characters via the avatar definition for Teddy. So what we've basically got is we've got a Teddy model with animations, and we have this Human 2 model that we created. We want to get the animations that are on Teddy and made for Teddy to go on Human 2. Now, the bones in Human 2 are probably named something completely different to what the bones of Teddy are named. And so we can create these mappings from Teddy to Human 2 via their avatar, and it's the avatar that matches up which bones belong to which, so which is the shoulder bone, which is the foot bone, which is the head bone, where's the pelvis bone, what are they called in the different models, and it maps them together so that you can then take animation from one character and put it onto another. Okay, time for another challenge. So what I've got here for you is a new starter file that you'll need to download called dancestarter.unity package. Bring that into a brand new Unity project, and what we're going to do, or what you're going to do, is get the animations that are on Granny's character here, and if you actually roll out what's on Granny, you'll see that she's got this Gangnam style animation on her that you can use, and I want you to get it and running on this character here, which was made in the Make Human software. So pause the video now, go away and do that. When we come back, I'll show you how to put that together. Okay, how did you go with that? Right, when you open up the scene that I've included in the file, it's going to have your characters next to each other. And if you have a look at Sporty Granny and roll out what's inside of that file, you're going to find that there's the Gangnam style animation here. And that's the one you want to make your animator controller out of. So instead of having your model separate to an actual animation like we did with Teddy, it's all together on this one thing, and we can use it in the same way. Over in the inspector, we want to go and make Granny into a humanoid. So make sure she's selected in the assets, and then we'll go over into inspector and hit apply on humanoid. We're going to get a little tick next to the configure box, which means it's already configured for humanoid for us, so we don't have to do any more with that. Okay, now we can do the same thing for the girl in the suit that I created, and we'll make that into a humanoid, and we will apply that as well. Okay, so now we need an animator controller. Let's go into our assets, right click and find create animator controller, and let's just call this dance. Just double click on it to open it. Now, as I said before, the animation that we want to use is actually inside of this rollout for Sporty Granny. So we can just drag her up there, and that will give you your Gangnam Style animation. And then we just have to assign this dance animator controller to the girl in the suit. Now, because we created the avatar for her, she automatically will have got an animator on her. So you just have to drag that dance over into there. Now, let's press play and have a look at what we get. Okay, so great. There is the animation that's out of this Sporty Granny folder, put onto a completely different character. Why isn't Granny dancing? Well, let's have a look at Granny in the hierarchy. Over in the inspector, she has an animator, but you didn't actually put the controller on there for dance. So we can, I mean, you don't have to, but if you want them to dance together, you can put it on there. And then if we press play, it'll be a coordinated effort between these two. Okay, so how did you go with that? You're starting to get the hang of creating these animations and putting them onto the different models. When we come back in the next lecture, I'm going to show you where you can get a lot of these different animations from so that you can use them in Unity and put them on your own characters. In the previous few lectures, we looked at a lot of animation theory, and in the last lecture, we looked at the keyframes and the timelines. We're actually going to use that now. So open up a brand new Unity project, and we're going to create a bouncing ball effect, but we're not going to use the physics system. We're going to actually do it by hand by manually coding in the keyframes. So go to your hierarchy. We're going to right click 3D object, and we're going to add a sphere. So I'll just lift that sphere up because it's positioned in my case at 0, 0, 0. So let me just move that up. And we're going to make this sphere red just to give it a bit of color. So in your assets, let's right click there, go create, and we're going to create a material. And we'll call this material red. Then select that, go over to the inspector, and just in the main maps area where there's this white, click on that, and the window that comes up, you want to set it to red, or you can set it to any color you like really, and then just close it. Now with that color, we can put it onto the ball by dragging and dropping it from our assets onto the scene view of the sphere. You can also add a material if you select your sphere here and drag it to there, or drag it up onto the sphere. Okay, so there's multiple different ways of setting that sphere to be red. Okay, so now let's create a ground plane, and we'll go to 3D object, create a plane. Okay, so there it is there. Now let me just move that down a little bit so it's like that. This is sort of very similar to what we had before when we were doing the physics. Okay, so as a bit of a challenge to just reinforce what we did with the ball, what I'd like you to do is set the ground to yellow. Okay, so pause the video now, go off and do that. When we come back, I'll go through those steps. Okay, how'd you go? Right, so in your assets, you want to create a new material, and we'll call that material yellow. Then over in the inspector, we're going to set that color to yellow in this little color window that comes up, and then we can get the yellow down here and drag that onto the plane. Okay, now what's important here is you want to have your sphere over this ground plane. So just select the sphere, and then in the scene, let's just move it up and down to make sure it's going to hit the ground. And I'm going to make mine just a little bit bigger. So over in the inspector, I'm just going to set the scale to 2, 2, and 2 for the X, Y, and the Z. Right, let's get straight into animating this ball. So we need the animation window. Now my animation window is up here behind my game window. But if you can't see it, which you probably can't if you've deleted the windows I've been telling you to along the way, then we need to go to Window and come down to Animation and then go Animation again. And that will bring up this window. Now yours might be floating around. So let me just see if I can float this. Bring it back here. Okay, so this is the window floating around. If you want to dock it, you just grab it and drag it to a spot. You'll want to be able to see the scene view and the animation view at the same time because we're going to work with both of these together. Okay, the next step is to select your sphere. So make sure you've got that selected either in the hierarchy or you've clicked on it in the scene. Then click on Create in the animation window. Now that's going to do a number of different things. First of all, it's going to open up a window and ask you what you want to save your animation as. And in this case, it is just bounce. So that's the name of our animation. And as soon as we click OK on that, you'll get some new files appear down in your assets. There's one called bounce. So this is your animation. And then you'll get this other one that's just called sphere, which has these like two boxes and these blue lines connecting it. This is the Animator. Now, the Animator attaches to the object and links the object to the actual animation. So we can make a bounce animation, but then put that onto other things. So it doesn't actually belong to this sphere alone. So this sphere animator is basically the commands that tell the sphere to bounce. So the animator is an area where you can give a whole bunch of different animations to an object and essentially program the order in which they will occur. And we'll be doing that much later on. But first of all, let's just open up this sphere and have a look what's in here. So just double click on it. It will open another window for you called the Animator. And the Animator looks like this. And basically, it's going to, at the moment, contain bounce. That will be the orange node that you see there. Just if you have it selected and then press the F key, it will actually focus in on it, just like it does in the scene view. Okay, so this is your bounce animation. There's nothing going on with your bounce animation at the moment, but it is inside of your Animator. Now, the Animator then goes onto your sphere. If we click on the sphere and have a look in the inspector, just down here as a new component. Okay, so this is how the sphere knows about the animator called sphere and then has this node in here called bounce. When something inside of here is orange, it means it's set by default to actually run. So if you just right click on it, you'll see that there's currently this faded out area because it's already set as default, but you can set as layer default state. Okay, so this is going to run as soon as we press play, but there's nothing actually in that animation. So let's make it. Go over to the scene, and what we need now are some keyframes. Now along the top here we have a timeline which is set between 0 and 1 second. If you put your mouse into this area here and scroll out, you can actually set that time to longer. Okay, so that's 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds. So how long do you want your animation to go for? Let's go with 1. So let's go back And if I hit the F key, it's actually just going to refocus it back to 1 second for us. Now, the keyframes are set at particular time intervals along here. We can actually look at the keyframes rather than the seconds. If you click at the end of that timeline and go to frames, it will show you the frames. Now, our animation here is being created at 60 frames per second, which is a good amount to aim for. So below about 15 frames per second, you actually start to see jitteriness, so the human eye can't actually process that, and we'll see individual frames. At 60, obviously, it's going to be quite smooth. Now, you can change that sample rate if you come down into set sample rate. Now, we're just going to work with seconds along the top, 60 frames per second. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is determine which property of the ball is going to be animated. So we click on Add Property, and that will give us a list of the things that we're allowed to animate and change over time. We want the transforms Y position because that's going to be the height, and that's all that we're changing at the moment. So select position and just click on the little Add button. That will give you immediately 2 keyframes, one at the start of the animation and one at the end of the animation. And if you scrub along your timeline, which is to just drag the mouse along there, you can see you're going up through your frames and there's no animations set. If you drop down the position and open it up and have a look at what the X, Y, and Z values for your sphere are, you can see that you have a Y height, and my ball is at 0 in the X and 0 in the Z. Now, depending on how you set your scene up, you might have moved it to somewhere else. That's okay. With the bounce, we're only interested in modifying the Y position here. Now, if you remember back in the hierarchy, just for a second, let's go there. Let's click on the sphere, and the transform that's at the top of the sphere, this is the thing that we are animating, and you can see that it's now under control of animation because it's gone to blue in the position boxes here. Okay, so if we now go to, say, 0, and we want to start the ball up a little bit higher, let's just zoom out in the scene. Now I'm going to hit the W key so I get my axes back again because it was on rotate. We want to click on record. Now, when we modify this ball's position, it's going to change its starting Y position. Notice over in the inspector that it has turned red because it's actually recording. So let's now lift that ball up and notice over here that that Y position is changing. If I want it to be at 5 exactly, I can type 5 in there like that. Okay, so let's just stop recording now and let's scrub through here. Notice that the last keyframe, remember it was set to 3 point something or other. If we just click on that here in the timeline, this keyframe, which is our Y position, it's gone back to my 3.72, which is what I had. So now what it's doing as we drag through, it's tweening between 5 in the Y, and over 1 second, it's taking the ball down to 3.72. Now, obviously, you want the ball to bounce from the starting position to the same starting position at the end. So we will click on this last keyframe, just update that to 5 so that now we're starting in the exact same position. Okay, so that's one thing to take note of before you actually start adding an animation or adding any properties to the animation, is to get it in the correct place, your object. Now, when you're creating an animation that you want to run over and over again, so this is a bouncing animation and you kind of want it to be seamless, which means that you create the first bounce loop and then you want it to play again and again and just keep bouncing and bouncing continuously. It doesn't mean you have to key all of those keyframes in for like 10 minutes or however long you want it to bounce for. You just do the first cycle is what it's called. Okay, so make sure when you're creating a cycle that your first keyframe properties are exactly the same as your last keyframe properties, and you do that by setting the ball or whatever it is in exactly the right position for the starting before you even go add, so that when you do go add, the values in the first keyframe and the last one are exactly the same. Okay, so now we're going to go halfway along to about 30 seconds, which is going to be at 30 frames because you've got 60 frames per second. Now, at this point, we want the ball to be on the ground. So we're going to click on record, and notice there's no keyframes yet, but it will add keyframes as we start making modifications. So let's bring that ball down, and I'm going to have it sitting halfway through the ground at about there. Okay, so now we've changed this Y keyframe in the center to be at negative 1.92. Okay, stop recording. Now if you scrub, look what you're getting. You're getting a bounce animation, and then we can press play up here on the animation to watch it loop over and over again. Okay, so we'll leave this video here. When we come back in the next video, we will continue having a look at the animation window and adding some more keyframes for our bouncing ball. Before we start working in Unity, it is beneficial to understand why animation works, because essentially it is an optical illusion. The earliest theory was called persistence of vision. It refers to the way multiple individual images merge into one when presented in quick succession in front of the human eye. It was originally thought that after an image was seen, a small imprint of that image remained on the back of the eye. When each successive image had a small change made to it, the illusion of movement was perceived. Or so they thought. The original theory as to why the human brain processed images detected by the eye in this way was disproved in 1912. Though many animation and film theorists still refer to persistence of vision, there are in fact two other phenomena that are thought to produce the illusion of movement required for animation. They include the phi phenomena and beta movement. Phi phenomena is the apparent movement of sequential luminous impulses, whereas beta movement is the apparent movement of stationary luminous impulses. Confused? They sound like the same thing, but physiologically they are different. Phi phenomena occurs when lights are turned on and off in quick succession, giving the illusion of movement. In this example, the red light appears to be moving around the square, but in reality it is just a colour change in each of the following cubes' colour. On the other hand, beta movement is what occurs in animated sprites and the effect that allows us to watch films that are recorded frame by frame. When individual frames are played back at the right speed,